The morning light of 3 distant suns filtered through the tall windows of the Galactic Academy. Yuna stood at the entrance of the Hall of Ancients, her heart beating fast with excitement. She had waited 2 years for this moment. Every first-year student at the Academy dreamed of visiting this hall, but only third-year students were allowed inside. Yuna was 22 years old, the only human in her class of 47 students. The others came from different planets across the galaxy. Some had blue skin and 4 arms. Others had scales that changed color with their emotions. A few floated instead of walking. But Yuna was the strange one here. Humans were new to the galactic community. Her species had only discovered faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. To the ancient races of the galaxy, humans were like babies taking their first steps. "Please gather close," said Professor Taewon, their guide for the day. He was a tall being with gray skin and 4 large eyes that could see in all directions at once. His voice was deep and kind. "Today, you will see the treasures of civilizations that no longer exist. Show respect. These are the last pieces of great empires that once ruled the stars." The students moved forward in a quiet group. Yuna walked beside her friend Hana, a girl from a water planet who had gills on her neck and webbed fingers. Hana had been kind to Yuna from the first day, when other students looked at the human with curiosity or even pity. "Are you excited?" Hana whispered. "More than I can say," Yuna replied. "My grandmother told me stories about ancient space travelers when I was little. She said our ancestors once sailed between the stars. Everyone thought she was just telling children's tales." Hana smiled with her wide mouth. "Old people often remember things that others forget." The Hall of Ancients was enormous. The ceiling rose so high that Yuna could barely see it. Glass cases lined the walls, each one holding objects that glowed with soft light. The air was cool and smelled like old books and distant memories. Professor Taewon stopped before the first display. Inside the case sat a crown made of pure light. It shifted and changed shape as they watched. "This belonged to the Luminari," the professor explained. "They were beings made of living light. They built cities in the hearts of stars. 3 million years ago they simply vanished. No one knows why. This crown is the only proof they ever existed." The students gasped and took pictures with their devices. Yuna stared at the crown with wonder. She tried to imagine beings made of light, dancing inside a star. It was beautiful and sad at the same time. They moved to the next display. This one held a small cube covered in strange writing. "The memory keepers created this," said Professor Taewon. "They stored the memories of their entire civilization inside objects like this cube. When they died out, their memories died with them. We have never been able to open it." Yuna felt a chill run down her spine. So much knowledge, locked away forever. The tour continued. They saw weapons that could destroy moons, jewelry that sang songs in forgotten languages, and maps of galaxies that no longer existed. Each item told a story of rise and fall, of glory and loss. 17 civilizations, Professor Taewon said as they walked deeper into the hall. 17 great empires that shaped the galaxy. All of them gone now. Some died in wars. Some destroyed themselves. Some simply disappeared without explanation. We keep their relics here so that we never forget them. Yuna listened carefully to every word. She noticed that the professor spoke of these civilizations with great respect, almost with fear. These were not just old empires. They were legends. They had built wonders that modern species could not understand or copy. "The oldest artifacts are at the end of the hall," the professor continued. "They belong to the Star Weavers, the first great civilization. They existed 8,000 years ago, before any other known species achieved space travel. They were the founders, the pioneers. Everything we have today, we owe to them in some way." The group moved toward the back of the hall. The lights grew dimmer here, as if the darkness itself wanted to protect these ancient secrets. Yuna felt strange, like something was pulling her forward. Her skin tingled, and her heart beat faster for no reason she could explain. "Are you okay?" Hana asked, noticing her friend's odd behavior. "I don't know," Yuna admitted. "I feel something, like I've been here before." "That's impossible. You've never left Earth before coming to the Academy." Yuna nodded, but the feeling did not go away. If anything, it grew stronger with each step. The Starweaver section was the most impressive of all. The glass cases here were larger, and the objects inside seemed to glow with an inner light. There were tools that looked both simple and impossibly advanced. There were clothes made of material that science could not identify. There were books written in a language that no computer had ever decoded. The Starweavers were masters of everything, Professor Taewon said, his 4 eyes wide with admiration. They understood science, art, music, and philosophy at levels we cannot imagine. They traveled to every corner of the galaxy. They helped younger species grow and learn. And then, 8,000 years ago, they vanished completely. No bodies, no messages, no explanation. They left behind only these relics and the stories other species told about them. Yuna barely heard the professor's words. Her attention had locked onto one object in a case at the far corner. It was a golden medallion about the size of her palm. The metal caught the light and seemed to burn with inner fire. But that was not what made Yuna stop breathing. On the surface of the medallion was a symbol. It showed a tree with roots reaching down and branches reaching up, surrounded by 7 stars arranged in a perfect circle. Yuna knew that symbol. She had seen it every day of her childhood. It was carved above the door of her family's home. It was embroidered on her grandmother's favorite blanket. It was tattooed on her own wrist, hidden now under her sleeve. It was her family's emblem, the symbol of her bloodline, passed down for generations that no one could count. "That's impossible," Yuna whispered, her voice shaking. Her legs moved on their own. She walked toward the case, pushing past other students who complained about her rudeness. She did not hear them. She could not think about anything except the medallion and the symbol that should not exist on an artifact from a civilization that died 8,000 years ago. Hana followed her friend with worried eyes. Professor Taewon stopped his explanation and watched the human girl approach the Starweaver display with growing confusion. Yuna pressed her hands against the glass. The medallion seemed to glow brighter, as if it recognized her, as if it had been waiting for her. "Professor," Yuna said, her voice barely above a whisper at first, then louder, strong enough for everyone to hear. "Professor Taewon!" The tall alien walked over to her. "Yes, Student Yuna? Is something wrong?" Yuna pulled back her sleeve, revealing the tattoo on her wrist. The exact same symbol that decorated the ancient medallion, the tree, the roots, the branches, the 7 stars. "Why does that artifact have my family's emblem on it?" The hall fell completely silent. Every student, every floating light, every breath of air seemed to freeze in place. Professor Taewon's 4 eyes blinked rapidly. His gray face became pale. He looked at Yuna's tattoo, then at the medallion, then back at the tattoo again. "That is impossible," he said slowly. "The Starweavers disappeared 8,000 years ago. Your species only developed writing 5,000 years ago. There is no way." But his voice trailed off, because there it was, the same symbol, on her skin, on the relic, exactly the same. The other students began to whisper. Some pulled out their devices to take pictures. Others backed away from Yuna, as if she had suddenly become something dangerous and unknown. Yuna did not notice any of them. She could only stare at the medallion, at the symbol that connected her to something ancient and forgotten, something that should not exist, something that changed everything she knew about herself and her people. What had her grandmother known? What secrets had her family kept for thousands of years? And why did she feel deep in her bones that she had finally come home? The whispers spread through the Hall of Ancients like fire through dry grass. Students pointed at Yuna and spoke in languages she did not understand. Their eyes held fear, confusion, and something else, something that looked almost like anger. Professor Taiwan raised his four-fingered hand to silence the crowd. His gray face was still pale, and Yuna could see his mind working behind those large eyes. He was trying to find an explanation, a simple answer that would make this strange moment disappear. "There must be a mistake," he said carefully. "Perhaps your family symbol is simply similar to the Star Weaver emblem. Coincidence happens, even across great distances of space and time." Yuna shook her head. She pulled out her communication device and showed the professor a picture. It was an image of her grandmother's house back on Earth. Above the wooden door, carved deep into the stone, was the tree with 7 stars. Every detail matched the medallion perfectly. "My grandmother said this symbol has been in our family for longer than anyone can remember," Yuna explained. "She said it was there before the house was built, before the village was built. Before history was written down, our family has always protected it." Professor Taiwan took the device with trembling hands. He zoomed in on the image, studying every line and curve. His breathing became shallow. "This changes nothing," said a voice from the crowd. It was Dowan, a student from a wealthy planet known for its advanced technology. His species had been traveling the stars for 10,000 years. They considered themselves the true heirs of galactic civilization. "Humans are primitives. They probably stole the symbol from old records they found in space. They like to pretend they are special." Several students nodded in agreement. Yuna felt her cheeks burn with shame and anger. She was used to such comments. Many species looked down on humans. Her people were newcomers, outsiders, accidents of evolution who had somehow stumbled into the cosmic community. But Hana stepped forward, her webbed hands clenched into fists. "Yuna would never lie. I know her. Something strange is happening here, and insulting her will not make it go away." Professor Taiwan held up his hand again. "Enough. This is a place of learning, not fighting." He turned to Yuna with kind but worried eyes. "Student Yuna, I believe you are telling the truth about your family symbol, but what you are suggesting is impossible by everything we know. The Star Weavers lived and died long before humans existed as a species." "Then how do you explain this?" Yuna asked, her voice steady despite the chaos in her heart. "I cannot," the professor admitted. "Not yet, but I know someone who might be able to help. The Academy has archives that go back millions of years, records that few people have ever seen. Perhaps the answers lie there." He turned to address the class. "The tour is over for today. Please return to your rooms. Student Yuna, please follow me." The students began to leave, still whispering and staring. Dowan gave Yuna a look of pure hatred before walking away. But others looked at her differently now, not with pity or curiosity, with something that might have been fear or wonder. Hana squeezed Yuna's hand. "I will wait for you. Whatever happens, you are not alone." Yuna managed a small smile. "Thank you, Hana. I don't know what I would do without you." She followed Professor Taiwan through a door hidden behind the Star Weaver displays. The corridor beyond was narrow and dimly lit. The walls were made of metal that looked very old, covered in writing that Yuna could not read. "Where are we going?" she asked. "To meet the Keeper of Records," the professor replied. "His name is Junho. He has worked in the archives for 300 years. If anyone knows the truth about the Star Weavers, it is him." They walked for what felt like hours, descending deeper into the academy. The air grew cooler. The lights grew dimmer. Finally, they reached a massive door made of black stone. Strange symbols glowed on its surface, and Yuna realized with a shock that some of them looked similar to the writing on the walls of her grandmother's house. Professor Taiwan pressed his hand against the door. It opened slowly, revealing a room so vast that Yuna could not see its edges. Shelves rose from floor to ceiling, filled with books, crystals, metal plates, and objects she could not identify. The smell of ancient knowledge filled her nose. In the center of the room sat an old being. He had the same gray skin as Professor Taiwan, but was much older. His body was bent, and his 4 eyes had turned cloudy with age. Yet there was sharpness in those eyes, a brightness that suggested a mind still very much awake. "Junho," Professor Taiwan said with deep respect, "I bring you a mystery." The old keeper looked at Yuna. His cloudy eyes moved over her face, her hands, her body. Then he saw her wrist, the tattoo, the symbol. Junho stood up so fast that his chair fell backward. His ancient body shook. His mouth opened, but no words came out. He simply stared at the symbol on Yuna's skin with an expression of pure shock. "The Tree of Stars," he finally whispered. "The royal emblem of the Star Weaver bloodline. I never thought I would see it on living flesh again." Yuna's heart nearly stopped. "Royal emblem? Bloodline? What are you talking about?" Junho walked toward her with slow, careful steps. His hands reached out as if he wanted to touch her, but was afraid. "Child, where did you get this mark?" "My grandmother gave it to me when I turned 18. She said it was tradition. Every member of our family receives it when they come of age. She said it would protect me and guide me home." Junho turned to Professor Taiwan. His voice was no longer weak or old. It was strong and clear. "Clear my schedule. Cancel all appointments. Send a message to the Grand Council. Tell them that the archives must be opened. All of them, even the sealed sections." The professor's eyes widened. "The sealed sections? But those have been closed for 5,000 years. Opening them requires permission from all 7 council members." "Then get their permission," Junho said sharply. "Tell them what I tell you now, and they will agree. Tell them that the Star Weavers did not disappear. Tell them that the children of the stars have come home." Yuna felt dizzy. The room seemed to spin around her. "I don't understand. Please, someone explain what is happening." Junho took her hands in his old, wrinkled grip. His cloudy eyes looked into hers with warmth and something that looked almost like tears. 8,000 years ago, the Star Weavers faced a great enemy, a darkness that came from beyond our galaxy. They could not defeat it by force, so they made a terrible choice. They hid their children on planets across the universe, erased their memories, and destroyed all records of where they had gone. Then the adults stayed behind to fight the darkness, knowing they would die. He paused, gathering his thoughts. "We always believed the children died as well, that the hiding places were found, that the Star Weaver bloodline ended completely. But we were wrong. Your people, the humans of Earth, you survived. You forgot who you were. You built new civilizations from nothing. And now, after 8,000 years of wandering in the dark, one of you has returned." Yuna could not speak, could not breathe. Her grandmother's stories echoed in her mind. Tales of ancestors who sailed the stars before falling to a small blue world. Tales of knowledge lost and promises kept through generations that could not remember why. "My grandmother," Yuna whispered. "She knew. She must have known something." "Your grandmother carried the sacred duty," Junho said gently. "Every generation, someone must keep the symbol alive. Someone must remember, even when they don't understand what they're remembering. She did her job well. Because of her, you are here. Because of her, the truth can finally be known." Professor Taiwan looked at Yuna as if seeing her for the first time, not as a primitive human from a young world, but as something ancient, something powerful, something that rewrote everything the galaxy believed about history. "What do we do now?" the professor asked. Junho smiled, and for a moment he did not look old at all. He looked alive with hope and purpose. "Now we open the archives. Now we learn what the Star Weavers truly left behind. Now we find out what really happened 8,000 years ago." He looked at Yuna with fierce determination. "And now we tell the galaxy that humanity is not a young species stumbling through the stars. They are the lost children of the greatest civilization that ever existed. They have finally, after all these centuries, found their way back home." News spread through the Galactic Academy like lightning across a stormy sky. By the next morning, everyone knew about the human girl and the Star Weaver symbol. Some believed, most did not. Arguments filled the dining halls, the classrooms, and the corridors. Species that had considered themselves the oldest and wisest now faced a possibility that shook their understanding of history. Yuna sat alone in her small room, staring at the tattoo on her wrist. She had barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the golden medallion glowing in its case. She heard Junho's words echoing in her mind. "The children of the stars have come home." A knock at her door made her jump. She opened it to find Hana standing outside, holding 2 cups of warm liquid. "I brought breakfast," Hana said with a gentle smile. "You look terrible." "I feel terrible," Yuna admitted. She let her friend inside and took one of the cups. The drink was sweet and calming. "Thank you for coming." "Did you think I would stay away?" Hana sat on the edge of the bed. "The whole academy is talking about you. Some students are saying wonderful things. Others are saying terrible things. But I know the truth. I saw your face when you looked at that medallion. You were not lying or pretending. You were as shocked as everyone else." Yuna nodded slowly. "I still don't understand any of this. My grandmother never told me we were connected to ancient aliens. She just said our family was special, that we had a duty to remember, even when we didn't know what we were remembering." "Maybe she was protecting you," Hana suggested. "Maybe the truth was too big to share with a child." Before Yuna could respond, her communication device buzzed. A message appeared on the screen. It was from Junho, the keeper of records. "Come to the archives. The council has given permission. The sealed sections are being opened. You must be present." Yuna's hands trembled as she read the words. "They're opening the sealed archives, sections that have been closed for 5,000 years. Hana's eyes widened. "That has never happened in the Academy's history. Whatever they're looking for, it must be incredibly important. They're looking for the truth about me, about my people, about whether humans really are connected to the Star Weavers." The 2 friends made their way through the academy. Students stopped and stared as Yuna passed. Some whispered insults. Others watched with wide, curious eyes. A few even bowed their heads slightly, as if showing respect to something they did not fully understand. The entrance to the archives was now guarded by soldiers in silver armor. They carried weapons that could destroy buildings with a single shot. The Grand Council was taking this matter very seriously. Professor Taewon waited for Yuna at the door. His face was tired but excited. The council debated all night. 4 members wanted to open the archives. 3 were against. In the end, the evidence was too strong to ignore. The symbol on your wrist matches the royal emblem exactly. There are no other copies in the known galaxy. The only way it could exist on your skin is if your family truly carries Star Weaver blood." They entered the archives together. Junho stood at the center of the vast room, surrounded by 7 tall beings in flowing robes. These were the members of the Grand Council, leaders of the most powerful species in the galaxy. They looked at Yuna with expressions that mixed fear, wonder, and doubt. "So this is the human," said one of them, a creature with skin like polished metal. She looks ordinary enough. Looks can deceive, Counselor Minho, Junho replied calmly. The Star Weavers were masters of hiding in plain sight. If they wanted their children to survive, they would have made them appear normal, unremarkable, forgettable. Another council member stepped forward. She had wings like a butterfly and eyes that changed color as she spoke. Keeper Junho, you have served the archives faithfully for 3 centuries. We trust your judgment, but what you are suggesting will change everything we believe about galactic history. We need proof. Real proof. Not just a symbol that might be coincidence. Then let us find that proof, Junho said. He turned to face a wall at the back of the room. It was covered in dust and sealed with locks that seemed to be made of pure light. Behind this wall are the oldest records in existence. They contain information about the Star Weavers that was gathered from species who knew them personally, species that are now extinct. If the answers exist anywhere, they exist here. He pressed his hand against the wall and spoke words in a language Yuna did not recognize. The locks began to glow brighter. Then, slowly, they faded away. The wall split down the middle and opened like a door. Behind it was a chamber filled with golden light. The air itself seemed to hum with energy. Shelves lined the walls, holding objects that looked more like art than documents. Crystal balls filled with swirling colors. Metal plates covered in writing that seemed to move and change. Books bound in material that felt alive to the touch. Junho walked into the chamber with careful steps. The council members followed, their eyes wide with awe. Even they had never seen this place before. These records were sealed after the Star Weavers disappeared, Junho explained. The races that survived the Great Darkness agreed to protect this knowledge until the time was right. They believed that one day the children would return. They wanted to have answers ready. He stopped before a pedestal at the center of the chamber. On it sat a sphere of pure crystal, about the size of a human head. Inside the sphere, stars swirled like a tiny galaxy. "This is the memory stone," Junho said softly. "It contains the last message of the Star Weaver Queen. She created it moments before the final battle against the darkness. No one has ever activated it because no one had the authority. Only someone of royal blood could unlock its secrets." He turned to look at Yuna. Everyone turned to look at Yuna. "Me?" she whispered. "You want me to touch that thing?" "You carry the royal symbol. You may be the only one in the galaxy who can." Yuna looked at the memory stone. Fear filled her heart. What if nothing happened? What if this was all a mistake? She would be humiliated. Her people would be mocked even more than before. But what if something did happen? What if the truth was real? She thought of her grandmother, sitting by the fire on cold winter nights, telling stories of ancestors who flew among the stars. She thought of the promise every child in her family made, to remember, to protect, to wait for the day when understanding would come. Yuna stepped forward. Her hand reached out toward the crystal sphere. The moment her fingers touched its surface, the world exploded with light. Images flooded her mind. A beautiful woman with eyes like galaxies stood before her. She wore robes of silver and gold, and the tree of stars glowed on her forehead. "My child," the woman said, her voice echoing from across 8,000 years. "If you are seeing this, then you have survived. Our plan worked. Our sacrifice was not in vain." Yuna could not speak. Tears streamed down her face as she listened to the voice of her ancestor. "The darkness came from beyond our galaxy. It consumed everything it touched. We could not defeat it, but we could delay it. We gave our lives to buy time. Time for you to grow. Time for you to become strong. Time for you to remember who you are." The image shifted. Yuna saw great ships carrying children to distant planets. She saw adults saying goodbye to their families, knowing they would never see them again. She saw the final battle, light against darkness, sacrifice against destruction. We hid you on a small world at the edge of known space. We erased your memories and sealed your powers. We made you forget so that the darkness could not find you through your minds. But we left seeds, stories passed down through generations, symbols kept alive by those who felt the truth even when they could not name it. The Star Weaver Queen smiled through her tears. You are our legacy. You carry our blood, our knowledge, our hope. The darkness has been sleeping for 8,000 years, weakened by our sacrifice. But it will wake again. When it does, you must be ready. You must remember what you are. You must reclaim your birthright. The Queen raised her hand, and the tree of stars blazed with brilliant light. Welcome home, child of the stars. The galaxy has been waiting for you. The vision ended. Yuna collapsed to her knees, gasping for breath. The council members stood in stunned silence. Some had tears in their eyes. Others looked frightened. Junho knelt beside Yuna and helped her stand. His old face was wet with tears of joy. Now do you believe? He asked the council. The Star Weavers did not die. They hid their children and waited for this moment. Humanity is not a young species. They are the oldest of all. They are the true heirs of the stars. Counselor Minho, the being with metal skin, stepped forward. For the first time, his expression was not doubt or suspicion. It was respect. We believe, he said quietly. And now we must prepare. If what the Queen said is true, the darkness will return, and when it does, humanity must be ready to face it. Yuna wiped her tears and stood tall. The weight of 8,000 years pressed down on her shoulders. But somehow she did not feel crushed. She felt strong. She felt ready. Her grandmother's stories were true. Her family's duty was real. And now, finally, she understood why she had always felt like she was waiting for something. She had been waiting to come home. The vision from the memory stone was recorded and broadcast across the galaxy. Within hours, billions of beings watched the Star Weaver Queen deliver her final message. They saw her face, heard her words, and witnessed the truth that had been hidden for 8,000 years. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Some species celebrated, saying they had always known humanity was special. Others protested, claiming the recording was fake, a trick created by humans to gain power and respect. Arguments turned into debates. Debates turned into conflicts. For the first time in centuries, the peaceful galaxy trembled on the edge of something dangerous. Yuna watched the chaos unfold from the safety of the archives. Junho had insisted she stay hidden while the Grand Council decided what to do. Outside, crowds gathered at the academy gates, demanding to see the human girl who carried Star Weaver blood. They want answers, Hana said, sitting beside her friend. Everyone wants to know what this means for them. I don't have answers, Yuna replied tiredly. I'm just a student. Yesterday, I was worried about passing my exams. Today, they're calling me a princess of an ancient empire. Professor Taewan entered the room with a serious expression. The council has reached a decision. They want to search for more evidence. They believe that if Yuna carries Star Weaver blood, other humans might carry it too. Perhaps many others. Yuna's eyes widened. You think there are more descendants? On Earth? The Queen's message spoke of hiding children across the universe. Earth was one location. But the Star Weavers would not have put all their hope in one place. There may be descendants on other worlds as well, species who never knew their true origins. This idea struck Yuna like a lightning bolt. If her family was not alone, if there were others out there carrying the same ancient blood, the implications were enormous. We need to contact Earth, she said quickly. My grandmother is still alive. She knows things she never told me. If anyone can help us understand, it's her. Junho appeared in the doorway. His old face looked younger than before, filled with energy and purpose. A ship is being prepared. The council agrees that we must speak with your grandmother, but travel to Earth will take 3 days, even at maximum speed. During that time, we must search the archives for more information about the Starweaver children and where they were sent. The next 3 days were the busiest of Yuna's life. She worked alongside Junho and a team of scholars, digging through records that had not been touched in thousands of years. They found maps showing planets where children were hidden. They found lists of bloodlines that were supposed to be protected. They found instructions for awakening dormant Starweaver abilities. The discoveries were both exciting and frightening. The Starweavers had planned everything carefully. They had created a network of guardians, individuals tasked with watching over the hidden children without revealing themselves. These guardians had been passing their duties down through generations, keeping the secret alive even as civilizations rose and fell around them. The guardians on Earth would have integrated into human society, Junho explained during one of their study sessions. They would have married humans, had children with humans, and slowly spread the Starweaver bloodline throughout the population. After 8,000 years, the blood would be thin in most people. But in families that kept the traditions, families like yours, the blood would remain strong. Yuna thought about her grandmother's insistence on certain rituals, the prayers spoken at dawn, the symbols drawn on doors during festivals, the stories told to every child before sleep. She had thought these were just old customs, meaningless traditions from a superstitious past. Now she understood they were keys, waiting to unlock doors that humanity had forgotten existed. On the 3rd day, the ship arrived at Earth. Yuna stood at the window, watching her home planet grow larger through the glass. It looked so small, so fragile, floating alone in the darkness of space. Hard to believe that this tiny blue world held the descendants of the greatest civilization the galaxy had ever known. The ship landed in a field near Yuna's grandmother's village. Word had spread, and hundreds of villagers gathered to see the alien vessel touch down. Their faces showed fear and wonder in equal measure. Most of them had never seen a spacecraft before. Now one sat in their wheat field, surrounded by soldiers in silver armor. Yuna walked down the ramp feeling strange in her academy uniform. Just weeks ago, she had left this place as an ordinary girl going to study at an alien school. Now she returned as something else entirely. Her grandmother waited at the edge of the crowd. She was small and old, her face lined with years of hard work under the sun. But her eyes were sharp, and when she saw the symbol of the Tree of Stars on the soldier's armor, those eyes filled with tears. "Grandmother!" Yuna called, running toward her. The old woman embraced her granddaughter with trembling arms. "I knew this day would come. I prayed I would live to see it. My mother told me the stories, as her mother told her, going back further than memory can reach. The children of the stars would someday remember. The sleepers would wake." Junho approached with deep respect. "Honored elder, your family has kept the sacred duty for 8,000 years. The galaxy owes you a debt that can never be repaid." Yuna's grandmother looked at the alien with calm acceptance. "We did what we were asked to do. We remembered. We protected. We waited." She turned to look at the villagers, at the ordinary humans who had gathered to witness this moment. "But we are not special. Everyone here carries the same blood. Everyone on this planet is descended from the stars, whether they know it or not." These words sent a shock through the assembled crowd. Villagers who had spent their lives farming and fishing suddenly learned they were connected to an empire that had ruled the galaxy. "Is it true?" asked an old man, stepping forward. "Are we really descendants of these star weavers?" Junho nodded solemnly. "After 8,000 years, the bloodline has spread throughout humanity. Some families, like Yuna's, kept the traditions and maintained stronger connections, but every human carries at least a trace of Starweaver heritage. It is written in your cells, in your instincts, in your dreams. A young mother holding a baby looked at her child with new eyes. A farmer examined his hands as if seeing them for the first time. A child asked his father if this meant they could fly through space like birds. The news would spread from this village to every corner of Earth. Humanity was about to learn the truth about their origins. They were not primitive creatures who had clawed their way up from the mud. They were the lost children of gods, hidden away for their protection, finally ready to reclaim their place among the stars. Yuna's grandmother invited the visitors into her small home. The cottage was modest, with stone walls and a wooden roof that leaked when it rained. But above the door, carved deep into ancient stone, the tree of stars gleamed in the fading sunlight. Inside, the old woman opened a chest that had been in the family for generations beyond counting. She pulled out objects wrapped in cloth: a small knife with a blade that never dulled, a ring that glowed faintly in the darkness, a book written in symbols that Junho recognized immediately. "These were passed to me by my mother," the grandmother explained, "and to her by her mother before her. We never knew what they were. We only knew we must protect them with our lives." Junho examined the objects with shaking hands. "These are Starweaver artifacts, tools and texts that were supposed to be lost forever. They contain knowledge that could help us prepare for the darkness." He opened the book carefully. The pages were made of material that felt like silk, but was stronger than steel. The writing moved and changed as he watched, responding to his touch, to his presence, to his questions. "This is a manual," he breathed. "A guide for awakening the dormant abilities in Starweaver descendants. It explains how to unlock the powers that were sealed away 8,000 years ago." Yuna looked at her grandmother. "Did you know about this?" The old woman smiled sadly. "I suspected. Sometimes in dreams, I could do things that were impossible. I could see places far away. I could hear voices speaking in languages I did not know. I thought I was going crazy. But the stories said we would remember when the time was right. So I kept the faith and waited." She took Yuna's hands and pressed them against her heart. "You were always special, my child. Even as a baby, you saw things others could not see. You knew things before they happened. I watched you grow and knew you would be the one to complete our duty. You would be the one to bring us home." Yuna held her grandmother close, feeling the weight of centuries pressing down on them both. So much sacrifice, so much patience, so much faith kept alive through darkness and forgetting. Outside, the stars began to appear in the evening sky. The same stars that had witnessed the fall of an empire now watched its children wake from their long sleep. The darkness was coming. The ancient enemy that had driven the Starweavers to sacrifice everything was stirring somewhere beyond the galaxy's edge, but humanity was no longer asleep. Humanity was remembering, and when the battle came, they would be ready. Yuna looked up at the stars and made a silent promise to her ancestors. "We will not let your sacrifice be wasted. We will fight. We will protect. We will make you proud." And deep in her blood, in the cells that carried 8,000 years of hidden heritage, something ancient and powerful began to wake. 1 year had passed since Yuna discovered her family's emblem on the ancient medallion. 1 year since the truth about humanity's origins had spread across the galaxy. 1 year of change, growth, and preparation for the darkness that was coming. Yuna stood on the balcony of the newly built Starweaver Academy on Earth, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of gold and pink. The academy had been constructed in just 6 months, using technology that the galaxy had provided and knowledge that humans were quickly remembering. Young people from every country came here to learn about their heritage, to unlock their dormant abilities, and to train for the battle that everyone knew was approaching. Behind her, footsteps announced the arrival of her most trusted companions. Hana walked in first, her webbed fingers now marked with symbols that showed her status as an honorary member of the Starweaver family. Professor Taewan followed, his 4 eyes scanning reports from across the galaxy. And finally, moving slowly but with undiminished spirit, came Junho, the keeper of records, who had become Yuna's mentor and guide. "The Council has sent their morning update," Professor Taewan reported. "Awakening programs have started on 47 planets where Starweaver descendants were found. The total number of identified bloodline carriers is now over 2 billion. 2 billion descendants scattered across the stars. 2 billion children of the ancient empire hidden on worlds they thought were their homes." Yuna still found these numbers hard to believe. "And the darkness?" she asked quietly. Junho's old face grew serious. "Sensors at the edge of the galaxy have detected movement. Something vast is stirring in the space between galaxies. It matches the descriptions in the ancient texts. The enemy is waking from its long sleep." Yuna closed her eyes and took a deep breath. This was the moment her ancestors had feared and planned for 8,000 years ago. This was why they had sacrificed everything, scattered their children, and trusted future generations to complete what they could not. How long do we have? Perhaps 2 years. Perhaps less. The darkness does not follow patterns we can predict. 2 years to unite a galaxy that had been divided for millennia. 2 years to awaken abilities that had been dormant for 8,000. 2 years to prepare for a battle against an enemy that had nearly destroyed the greatest civilization in history. It seemed impossible. But then again, many things that happened in the past year had seemed impossible. Yuna turned to face her friends. "Send word to all the Starweaver academies. Training must be accelerated. We cannot afford to lose a single day." She walked back inside, passing through halls decorated with the Tree of Stars. Students filled the corridors, humans and aliens alike, learning to work together in ways their ancestors would have thought unthinkable. The discovery of humanity's true origins had not just changed how humans saw themselves, it had changed how the entire galaxy saw each other. Species that had looked down on humans now treated them with respect and curiosity. Species that had kept themselves separate from the galactic community now came forward, eager to help and to learn. Old grudges faded as everyone realized they faced a common enemy, a darkness that did not care about the divisions between species or worlds. Yuna entered the central chamber where the memory stone was now kept. The crystal sphere floated in a beam of light, preserved and protected by the most advanced technology available. Every day, Yuna came here to listen to her ancestors' message, to remind herself why she kept fighting when the weight of responsibility threatened to crush her. She placed her hand on the sphere, and the familiar image of the Starweaver Queen appeared before her. "My child," the ancient voice whispered. "If you are seeing this, then you have survived. Our plan worked. Our sacrifice was not in vain." Yuna had heard these words hundreds of times, but they still brought tears to her eyes. She thought of her grandmother, who had passed away 3 months ago, peacefully and with a smile on her face. The old woman had lived long enough to see the awakening she had waited for all her life. She had died knowing that her duty was complete, that the stories she had protected had finally found their purpose. "We did it, grandmother," Yuna whispered to the empty room. "We remembered. We came home. And now we will finish what the Star Weavers started." The doors opened and a young man entered. His name was Do-Hoon, and he had been one of the first humans to fully awaken his Star Weaver abilities. He could move objects with his mind and see glimpses of possible futures. A year ago, he had been a farmer in a small village who had never left his country. Now he was one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. "Commander Yuna," he said with a slight bow. The title still felt strange to Yuna, but the council had insisted that someone must lead the awakening humans, and everyone agreed it should be her. The delegation from the outer worlds has arrived. They wish to discuss joining the alliance. Yuna nodded and followed Do-hoon to the meeting hall. Inside, representatives from dozens of species waited around a large table. Some had fought against each other for centuries. Now they sat together, unified by fear of the coming darkness and hope that together they might survive. A tall being with scales that shifted colors stood as Yuna entered. His name was Sunwoo, leader of a species that had rejected contact with other worlds for 5,000 years. His people lived on planets at the very edge of the galaxy, close to where the darkness was approaching. "We have always been proud," Sunwoo said, his voice heavy with emotion. "We believed we needed no one, that we were strong enough alone. But our ancestors once knew the Star Weavers. They told stories of the Great War, of the sacrifice that saved our worlds. When we learned that the children of the stars had returned, we knew we could not stand apart any longer." He dropped to one knee, a gesture of respect that shocked everyone in the room. "We offer our ships, our soldiers, and our loyalty. Command us, daughter of the stars. We will follow you into the darkness itself." Other representatives began to rise and offer their own pledges. Species that had been enemies now promised to fight side by side. Worlds that had hoarded their resources now offered to share everything. The galaxy was coming together in ways that had not happened since the original Star Weaver Empire 8,000 years ago. Yuna felt overwhelmed by the responsibility. She was just 23 years old. A girl from Earth who had spent most of her life thinking she was ordinary. How could she lead so many people against such a terrible enemy? But then she remembered her grandmother's words. "You were always special, my child." And she remembered the Starweaver Queen's final message. "You carry our blood, our knowledge, our hope." She was not alone. She had never been alone. Every ancestor who had kept the faith, every guardian who had protected the bloodline, every parent who had told the old stories to their children, they were all with her. Their strength flowed through her blood. Their love filled her heart. Their hope guided her path. Yuna stood tall and addressed the gathered representatives. "I am honored by your trust. I promise to do everything in my power to protect our peoples and defeat the darkness. But I cannot do this alone, and I do not want to. We are stronger together." That is what the Star Weavers understood 8,000 years ago. That is what we must remember now. She looked around the room at faces of every shape and color, beings from worlds scattered across the entire galaxy. We are all children of the stars. Different shapes, different histories, different dreams, but connected by the same light. When the darkness comes, it will find not a scattered collection of frightened species, but a united family ready to defend our home. She raised her hand, and the Tree of Stars symbol glowed on her palm, bright enough for everyone to see. Together, we will honor the sacrifice of those who came before. Together, we will protect those who will come after. Together, we will face the darkness and show it that the light never truly dies. It only waits for the right moment to shine again. The representatives cheered. Some wept. Others reached out to clasp hands with former enemies, sealing bonds that would have seemed impossible just a year ago. Later that night, Yuna stood once again on the balcony watching the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the edge of the galaxy, the darkness waited. It was old and powerful and hungry for destruction. But humanity was ready. The galaxy was united. The children of the Star Weavers had finally come home. Yuna touched the tattoo on her wrist, the Tree of Stars that connected her to 8,000 years of history and hope. "We're coming," she whispered to the darkness. "And this time, we won't run. This time, we fight. The stars seemed to shine brighter in response, as if the spirits of ancient star weavers were looking down with pride and love. The story was not over. In many ways, it was just beginning. But for the first time in 8,000 years, the universe felt whole again. The lost children had found their way home, and nothing, not even the darkness between galaxies, could extinguish the light they carried within them. The tree had been planted long ago. Its roots had grown deep through countless generations of faith and sacrifice. Now its branches were reaching toward the stars once more. And humanity, the forgotten heirs of the greatest civilization that ever existed, was finally ready to bloom.